All right, so this is going to be the last part of this particular unit. So in the last video, we discussed the respiratory system, which is how oxygen is able to enter into our bodies and how carbon dioxide is able to exit out of our bodies. But we are still missing that very important component of how the oxygen is transported from the alveoli to our body cells so that we can use oxygen for cellular respiration, and then how the carbon dioxide that is made as a byproduct of cellular respiration is transported back to the alveoli so that we can eventually breathe it out. So that connection is the circulatory system. So that's what we're going to be looking at. How do we actually transport oxygen and carbon dioxide so that we can either use the oxygen or we can get rid of the carbon dioxide? So again, make sure you have your vocab notebook out and ready to go. That way, as we go through the different vocab here, you can pause the video and fill out your vocab notebook as we go. So when I'm talking about the circulatory system, I'm talking about your heart and your blood vessels and your blood. So the circulatory system, the word circulate means to move around. So the job or the function of the circulatory system is to transport oxygen to the cell, to transport carbon dioxide away from the cell, and it's also going to transport other nutrients around the body. So if we go back to the digestive system, once those nutrients are absorbed from the villi, you're going to have blood vessels surrounding the villi, and that's how some of the nutrients are transported in your body to where they need to go in order to help you function. So again, we have a diagram right here of the circulatory system. I understand that this can look very complicated. We are going to break it down. We can go to the next slide, please. There we go. So the vocab words we're going to be focusing in on are heart, arteries, capillaries, and veins. So not too many for the circulatory system. It's, again, generally like kind of one long tube that blood flows through in a specific order so that things can be transported correctly. All right, so let's talk about the heart. I'm sure that you are aware that the heart is a very important organ in your body. Your heart needs to be beating, your heart needs to be working in order for you to be alive. But what is your heart actually doing that helps to keep you alive? So this is also going to link back to that CPR activity that we did at the very beginning of the circulatory system and respiratory system. But your heart is basically a muscular pump. So it's made out of muscle. It's specifically made out of cardiac muscle. Cardio, cardiac, cardi, like C-A-R-D-I, that prefix is always talking about your heart. So your heart is made out of muscle, specifically cardiac muscle. And keep in mind, muscle, its only job is either to contract or relax. So basically the heart is a pump that is the pump that's moving the blood throughout your blood vessels. Your heart has 4 chambers in order to help organize its blood and also to help organize the contraction of the heart to beat properly or to contract properly to move the blood throughout your body. So the 4 chambers are going to be 2 atriums and 2 ventricles. Atriums are on the top of the heart, these 2 smaller chambers right here, and the ventricles are the larger chambers on the bottom down here. So again, like I talked about with the respiratory system when we were labeling Joe, when you label the right and left atrium or right and left ventricle, you are labeling it according to the person that it belongs to. So if this heart that we're looking at, like this is the front of the heart, we're looking at a person, this would be the person's left side, even though it looks like your right side. This is the person's left side. This is the person's right side. So that's why it looks opposite, but we're labeling it as left atrium and left ventricle, and then right ventricle and right atrium. Now, your heart, if you take your fist put it out in front of you just like this, right? So like you're about to punch someone, take your fist, put it in the middle of your chest, tilt it slightly to the left. That's going to be the size, shape, and location of your heart. So like I said, the heart's job is to circulate the blood, to pump the blood. But now we're going to talk about the different blood vessels, or the different tubes that the blood flows through in order to let this circulation happen. So there are 3 types of blood vessels: arteries, capillaries, and veins. Oh, this should be switched. All right, I switched it. I apologize. So we're talking about arteries, veins, and capillaries. All 3 of these are blood vessels, but they do slightly different jobs. So arteries are larger blood vessels. They carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart. So when I say oxygen-rich blood, I mean blood that has a lot of oxygen inside of it. So this blood needs to go to all of our body cells to drop that oxygen off so that our cells can use the oxygen to make ATP. Generally, this is moving away from the heart. So again, I will get into the pathway that blood flows through, but it will make a little bit more sense when we get there. So veins are sort of the opposite of arteries. Veins, again, are large blood vessels, but they carry oxygen-poor blood, and they carry this blood towards the heart. So oxygen-poor blood just means that the oxygen has already been dropped off at the body cells, and there's just not a lot of oxygen in that blood. There will be a lot of carbon dioxide in that blood, and it happens to be moving towards the heart because of the way that blood flows through our body. Now, the last type of blood vessel are called capillaries. These are very, very, very small, tiny blood vessels. This is where gas exchange takes place. So this is where oxygen can diffuse into our body cells. This is where carbon dioxide can diffuse out of our body cells back into the blood. So when we're talking about gas exchange between the respiratory system and the circulatory system, gas exchange is taking place between the alveoli of the respiratory system and the capillaries of the circulatory system, specifically the capillaries that surround the alveoli. So these are just some diagrams of what blood vessels look like. You can see there's some different layers involved, but these are the 3 different types of blood vessels that we need to know about. So now that we've talked about the different types of blood vessels and the heart, so where this blood is going, let's talk about the stuff that's actually in your blood that's important for us to understand, to better understand the circulatory system. Basically, there are 3 types of blood cells. You can have red blood cells, which are abbreviated RBC, red blood cell. You have white blood cells, abbreviated WBC for white blood cell. And then you have platelets. So in these pictures down here, it is showing you the different types of cells. These red, I don't know, they're kind of like donut-looking cells. I don't know what else to call them, pancake-looking cells. These red ones are your red blood cells. They're red, that's why they're called red. This right here is a white blood cell, just to show the size and shape difference. In this picture over here, this would be a red blood cell. It's a black and white picture. So this is your red blood cell. This is your white blood cell. This is what a platelet would look like. And then this is what platelets in action look like. So for red blood cells, these are specialized cells that basically are responsible for transporting oxygen and carbon dioxide. So these are the little taxis or the little Ubers that take the oxygen to your body cells, and then they take the carbon dioxide away from your body cells back to the lungs. They use a molecule called hemoglobin, and in that process of dropping the oxygen off and picking up the carbon dioxide, hemoglobin is converted to methemoglobin, same molecule, different format, and this is what gives blood its either red color with hemoglobin or that like blue color when it doesn't have oxygen, which is from the methemoglobin. Just as a size reference, there are about 5 million red blood cells in a single drop of blood. So for all of you vampires out there that will like prick your finger and try to get a drop of blood out, a single drop of blood has about 5 million red blood cells. So they are very, very, very tiny cells. They're so tiny that they don't have a nucleus. White blood cells, on the other hand, they are larger, so they're bigger than the red blood cells. And white blood cells are your immune system. So when we do talk about the immune system, we will come back to the white blood cells, but they are circulating in your blood, in your circulatory system, because it goes all over your body. So that basically is a transportation system to bring them where they need to go, to make sure that you are not letting any negative bacteria or viruses enter your body and make you sick. The last type of blood cell is a platelet, and these are cell fragments, so sort of like old red blood cells or old white blood cells, and they are used to create blood clots. So if you ever get a scab, that scab is made out of platelets. It's clotting your blood, it's stopping you from bleeding. And the way that they do this is they secrete a protein called fibrin. So it's a sticky protein, and it acts sort of like a net to stop blood loss from happening. So that's what you're seeing here, that like net-like structure from the fibrin that the platelets are secreting. And that net-like structure is what would create your scab if you get a cut. All right, so I'm going to go into present mode for this slide right here, just because I animated it so that we can better see the flow of blood through the human body. So you won't be able to see my face, which I know is probably a disappointment to most of you. But like I said, I think it will be good to see this animation. All right, so the steps right here are the steps that blood flows through. It's basically a cycle, it's a circle, so you could start at any one of these steps and just work your way through it and keep cycling through. I've decided to start in a body vein that is going to the right atrium of the heart. So before we get into the steps over here, let's kind of decode this diagram over here. So this is your heart. So we have our left atrium, our left ventricle, and our right ventricle. Here we have what would be arteries, because we have oxygen-rich blood moving away from the heart, which we will see in a second. Over here would be a vein, because this would be oxygen-poor blood moving towards the heart. So keep in mind, red means oxygen, blue means no oxygen. Now over here, this is representing our capillaries. So this is where some gas exchange is taking place. We do have some capillaries up here, and then we also have a little diagram of the lungs to show that this is where gas exchange is taking place between the alveoli of the respiratory system and the capillaries of the circulatory system. All right, so let's get this animation started. Like I said, I'm starting from your body, and I'm going in a vein, and I'm moving towards the right atrium of the heart. So down here, I'm going to say there are some cells in your body, and these capillaries are surrounding those cells in your body. So what we've done is we've dropped off the oxygen on this side, and we've picked up the carbon dioxide. So we are in a vein, we are doing oxygen-poor blood, and it is moving towards the heart. The next step is, once we follow this blood vessel all the way to the heart, is that we are going to move into the right ventricle of the heart, which is right up here. And that is going to eventually move into, or what I should say, I'm sorry. So we're moving into the right atrium of the heart, and then the heart is able to pump that blood into the right ventricle down here. So now that we are in the right ventricle, we have to exit the heart again. So we're going to come up this way and through this tube over here for step 3. So we are moving from the heart eventually to the lungs. So specifically the alveoli of the lungs, we are moving into some capillaries. And like I've been saying, this is where diffusion takes place. This is where gas exchange takes place. So the carbon dioxide diffuses into the alveoli so that we can exhale the carbon dioxide, and the oxygen is going to diffuse into the capillaries over here as we inhale so that we can transport that oxygen to our body cells. So from the lungs, oh, that's what I said. So we're moving in the lungs right here. We are dropping off our carbon dioxide. We are picking up our oxygen. So that for step 4, we're moving from the lungs. So now we are in oxygen-rich blood. So now we're moving from the lungs back towards the heart, specifically the left atrium of the heart. For step 5, again, the heart is pumping from the right atrium to the the left atrium to the left ventricle. And then we are moving out of the heart into this artery over here. So for step 6, we're basically bringing this full circle. So we're moving through this artery right here, and we are coming back down to the body down here where we started so that, again, gas exchange can take place. So in this case, we're dropping off the oxygen and we're picking up the carbon dioxide. So like I said, this is one big convoluted circle, and it's just going to keep moving through. So one more time, if we start in the body down here, like I said, we dropped off our oxygen, we picked up our carbon dioxide. We're now bringing our carbon dioxide through a vein that is leading to the right ventricle of the heart that will be pumped into the right atrium of the heart that will be pumped into the right ventricle of the heart so that this deoxygenated blood can move through this blood vessel right here towards the lungs, where again gas exchange can take place. This time it is between the circulatory system and the respiratory system. So we are dropping off our carbon dioxide, we are picking up our oxygen, and now we're moving into oxygenated blood over here, leading back to the heart. So we're in the left atrium of the heart. That heart will pump the blood into the left ventricle, and then we are able to exit the heart again through this artery right here, where we will eventually be able to make it to a body cell to, again, exchange gas, dropping off the oxygen, picking up the carbon dioxide. So like I said, it's kind of one giant convoluted circle that the blood is just always being moved through. I do suggest taking some time and really working your way through this diagram. So opening up the slide deck on your own and then putting it in present mode and really watching where the arrows are going so that you can better see where the blood is flowing through the body. All right, so this is just another diagram of your circulatory system if you'd like to see it in a different way. So in this case, it's separated the right and left lungs from each other. It also has 2 different places where oxygen and carbon dioxide can be dropped off in the body. So again, it has the arrows that you can help to follow along with. If we want to start in a similar place, so in the body right here, here's some capillaries. We've dropped off our oxygen, which it's showing. We're picking up our carbon dioxide from some tissue cells. We can follow this vein right here into the left atrium of the heart, which leads to the right atrium of the heart, which leads to the right ventricle of the heart, which is then pumped out so that we can go towards a lung. We can exchange gas again, so drop off the carbon dioxide, pick up the oxygen, so that we can then follow our way back towards the heart. So we will enter the left atrium and then the left ventricle, so we can work our way back out to a different body cell over here, different body tissues, drop off the oxygen, pick up the carbon dioxide, make our way to the heart, etc. So same loop, slightly different diagram. Whichever one works better for you, use that diagram. I do want to take a moment and discuss sort of the evolution of the heart and the circulatory system. So all animals are going to have some sort of circulatory system. We all need oxygen, we all make carbon dioxide, and we need a way of transporting it through the body. So if we look at fish, for example, their circulatory system right here. Why is my arrow being so weird? This circulatory system over here. What you will see is that fish, their heart is only a 2-chamber heart. They only have 1 ventricle and 1 atrium, and their heart only pumps deoxygenated blood. So it's a more simple circle, you could say. So this just isn't as efficient or effective as the type of heart that we have. But keep in mind that fish live in the water, and they live more on that horizontal plane versus the vertical plane. So they don't need to worry about gravity as much as we do. So that's why this works for fish. If we move more towards amphibians, so an example would be like a turtle. They have a 3-chamber heart. So they have 2 different atriums. They have a right atrium and a left atrium, but they only have 1 ventricle. So again, this is helping the land creatures, or land and water, because a turtle will be on land and in water. This will help them pump their blood a little bit more efficiently, especially on land when they have to worry more about gravity. But what you can see here is that in the blood, or in the heart itself, the oxygenated blood and the deoxygenated blood are mixing together just a little bit. So that means anytime that the blood is exiting the heart with oxygenated blood, it's just not as oxygenated as it possibly could be. So again, it's just not as efficient or effective as our 4-chambered hearts are, so mammals. So this would have been the last type of heart to evolve. Mammals live primarily on land. Yes, there are a few mammals that live in the ocean, like dolphins and whales. However, for the most part, we do live on land, and so we do need that 4-chambered heart so we can pump blood effectively, efficiently, and beat gravity in the process. So I just want to review a little bit right here. And put the circulatory system and respiratory system together for us. So we're going to go from the micro, the small stuff, to the macro, or the big stuff. So basically, our bodies use diffusion for gas exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide. We talked about this in terms of the respiratory system and circulatory system, because gas exchange takes place between the alveoli in the lungs, which is your respiratory system, and the capillaries, which is your circulatory system, surrounding the alveoli. This is how oxygen can be delivered to all cells for cellular respiration so that we can make ATP, and carbon dioxide can be transported out of the body. So this is looking at how we're actually getting the oxygen in and the carbon dioxide out. Now, putting it together with that CPR activity that we did, just to talk about it in more detail, because when we did that activity, we didn't have all the information, but now we do. So at the beginning of the unit, we watched a video of a man receiving CPR. We can now explain why CPR saved his life beyond just saying, he's getting some oxygen when we do the rescue breaths and his heart is pumping when we do the chest compressions. So what we can say is that the rescue breaths will provide oxygen to the lungs, specifically the alveoli, and then the oxygen can diffuse into the surrounding capillaries. Now that we have the oxygen in the capillaries, we can use the chest compressions to keep the heart pumping so that blood with the oxygen from the rescue breaths can be transported to cells and used for cellular respiration and ATP production, and then the carbon dioxide that's made as a byproduct can be transported away from the cells. So we are manually keeping the respiratory system and circulatory system going if a person is receiving CPR. And that's how it works. So at this point, your entire vocab notebook should be filled out. Make sure you have done those words. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions.